America was attacked on September the 11th, 2001. Today, we are in 2010. 9 years have passed. The question on the mind of most Americans and most people around the free world is why America was attacked, where are we in this confrontation, who will win the conflict, will the jihadists eventually defeat the forces of freedom? America was attacked way before 9/11. In 1993, first terrorist act against the Twin Towers, the Khobar Tower in Saudi Arabia, the rise of the Taliban in 1996, attacks against our embassies in 1998. 1999, there were attempts to do further attacks. And beyond that, before that, Osama bin Laden declared war in 1998 against the United States. Last, before 9/11 in 2000, another attack against the USS Cole. The question that was asked by the 9/11 Commission in 2004, how come America didn't know about it? How come we were not prepared for that war? How come these jihadist networks who targeted America have been involved in massacres and genocide in the Arab and Muslim world against Christian minorities, Baha'is, Muslim moderates in Algeria, in Lebanon, a genocide in Sudan? The question is always, how come we didn't know about it? Well, the answer is very simple. There was a failure of the expertise upon which the US government and academia and media relied on. The oil-producing regimes out of the region have been funding our Middle Eastern studies or international relations and Islamic studies, so that year after year, those classrooms have been producing graduates who became our elite. Writers in the New York Times, editors in C-SPAN, NPR, and that Middle East studies elite failed to understand that this country was targeted by an organized foe, worldwide, global network of the jihadists, Salafists like Al-Qaeda, like the Taliban, like Jama'ah Islamiyah, or Khomeinists like Hezbollah, the Pasdaran, and Al-Quds Force. So now, the second question, what is it that we should do as Americans and as citizens of the free world? Well, education is the answer. We need to be educated about the history of that region, the history of that threat, their strategies. American citizens are the cornerstone of this democracy and are the ones who ultimately would decide if we can win this war or not. So what we need today are educators, are channels coming from civil society, private sector. We need programs, we need lectures, we need debates about what has not been debated enough by the American media and by the American academia. Therefore, this project is a very important one. It's a project that aims at creating a series of discussions never seen before about the jihadi threat. And I do invite potential viewers, viewers of the future, people in the private sector to support this project. This is the great the great teacher. And it is needed for this generation, for the next generation. So I hope that in the future, this project will provide the answer. And I certainly will stand with this project. Thank you.
must come to America.
Constitutes the most devastating series of terrorist attacks in history.
The only deen Allah accepts is Al-Islam. And whoever seeks any other deen apart from Islam will never be accepted.
Allahu Akbar!
And we stand together to win the war against terrorism.
And you too will make your destruction.
A recent report sponsored by the Center for Security Policy states that threats from terror groups such as Al-Qaeda is outmatched by the threats from jihadists allegedly trying to undermine the U.S. The recent report claims that these jihadists aim to implement Sharia law in the U.S. Allegedly, a stealthy jihad is taking place within the U.S., a theory which concludes that there are some who want to replace the Constitution with Sharia and reshape how this country operates. They do this through the U.S. legal system, using it against us and by undermining our financial system. The recent study states, and I quote, "This form of warfare includes multi-layered cultural subversion, the co-opting of senior leaders, influence operations and propaganda, and other means of insinuating Sharia into Western societies." Is this true? If so, why aren't most people aware of it? The U.S. seems to be focusing its efforts on fighting the war on violent terrorism, but what if a nonviolent form of jihad is seeping into the country, allowing for a quiet growth of Islam, and whose goal is to eventually establish a Sharia-driven society? Is that even possible? Thank you for tuning in. I'm Summer Goriel, your host this evening. Thank you for joining us. Tonight we will be discussing stealth jihad, and we have a few very special guests that I'd like to introduce to you. We have Pamela Geller, human rights activist and co-founder of Stop Islamization of America. She's also the co-author of The Post-American Presidency, the Obama Administration's War on America. We also have Anjem Choudhury, a jihadi who calls for the imposition of Sharia law in Britain. He's an activist and leader of the organization Islam for UK. He's also refused to condemn the 9/11 attacks and the 2005 London bombings. And we also have Robert Spencer, director of Jihad Watch, program of the David Horowitz Freedom Center. He's also the author of 10 books, including Stealth Jihad, How Radical Islam is Subverting America Without Guns or Bombs. And finally, we also have Brother Osama Dakduk in the studio with us this evening. Welcome. Christian apologist and also president of the Way Ministry. So our topic tonight, again, is stealth jihad. We will look into its core difference. We'll look into what it is, its core difference from the violent form of jihad we usually see reported. We'll also take a look at the goal of stealth jihad, if Islamization is coming to the West, why it is, and we'll also see how Islam is advancing in Europe, what initiatives have been taken to establish Sharia in Britain, and if this is consistent with Quranic teachings. So what I'd like to do first is turn it over to Robert Spencer. Thank you again for joining us this evening on the program. I'd like you sort of to describe to us what stealth jihad is, and then from there just talk to us a little about the goal of stealth jihad.
Well, the stealth jihad is the attempt to impose Islamic law over non-Muslim states or areas by nonviolent means. The attention of law enforcement and governing authorities has been exclusively on terrorism, but actually the attempt to bring Islamic law bit by bit, piece by piece into the West is proceeding by means other than terrorism far more effectively than it is by means of terrorist acts, although the two actually go together and go hand in hand. And what we see in the stealth jihad are attempts by Islamic advocacy groups like the Council on American Islamic Relations and many others to assert the principle in all sorts of small instances all over the country, piece by piece, bit by bit, to assert the principle that where Islamic law and American law conflict, it is American law, not Islamic law, that has to be the one that gives way.
Wonderful. So do you, so you're saying that stealth jihad is essentially to destroy, in a sense, Western civilization in nonviolent means?
Oh, that's absolutely the case. As a matter of fact, those are the words of the Muslim Brotherhood. And most of the Islamic groups in the United States are Muslim Brotherhood-linked groups. the Islamic Society of North America, the Muslim American Society, the Council on American Islamic Relations, the Muslim Students Association. They're all brotherhood groups, and the brotherhood is dedicated, in its own words, to eliminating and destroying Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house. That's the stealth jihad.
Wonderful. Well, what I'd like to do now is turn it over to Pamela Geller, who's with us on the phone. Pamela, you have an organization you co-founded, Stop Islamization of America. Why don't you give us an overview of your initiatives in that organization and its relation to stealth jihad?
Thank you so much for having me, Summer. Stop Islamization of America, or SIA, is an organization I founded with Robert Spencer. It's a human rights organization dedicated to freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and individual rights. No special rights for special classes. And, of course, this is a direct refutation to the Islamic supremacists in this country that would impose Islam on the secular marketplace and in the public square. So our focus is to maintain or fight for the separation of mosque and state, which in the minds of Islamic supremacists is impossible because mosque is state. And so we fight against the mosquing of the workplace, where prayer times are imposed on union contracts and non-Muslims are forced to lengthen their days to accommodate prayer time 5 times a day. Or the case of the mosquing of public schools, where, innocuously enough, a Muslim child wants to pray in the public school, and, won't you set aside some prayer space? And the next thing you know is that you've desecularized the public school by introducing Muslim prayer space into the public school. Or the case of Florida, a worker was fired from Rising Star Industries because she was eating a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich in the company cafeteria that had decided at some point to go halal. You have the U.S. Treasury Department giving seminars in Sharia finance a week after the Obama administration nationalized some banks. You have lawsuits against Disney to wear the hijab. This is a dress code that's been in place at Disney since 1957. You want to dress a certain way? Don't work at Disney. You don't want to check out halal, a meat that's not halal at Target or Walmart? Don't work at Target or Walmart. We believe that we should not change to accommodate Islam. If you come to America, if you come to the West, then you are making a choice to live in a free, secular society. So these are the initiatives that we're working on. Most currently, of course, is the Stop the Ground Zero Mega Mosque, which is an insult, a deliberate provocation, a stab in the eye to build a 15-story mega mosque in a building that was destroyed in the attacks on 9/11. And just as, look, there's no question they have a right. And we've never invoked the First Amendment or sought to abridge the First Amendment at any time. The Japanese have a right to build a Shinto shrine at Pearl Harbor, but they never asked because it's the wrong thing to do. Okay. So this is the work that we're engaged in. And frankly, I must tell you that Robert Spencer's book, Stealth Jihad, is the primer, is the definitive work on this. I know you cited some study that was basically gleaned from bon mots of Mr. Spencer's, but if anybody in your viewing audience really wants to understand the nitty-gritty of how we are being infiltrated, you must read Stealth Jihad. It's the preeminent work on this subject.
Absolutely, and we will actually go into that